Imagine this. You're lying in bed at 2:47 a.m. wide awake. Not because of caffeine, not because of noise, but because there's a quiet, creeping hollowness clawing at your chest. The room is still, the ceiling fan rotates endlessly above, and your phone, now a cold rectangle of forgotten distraction, rests inches from your hand. You've scrolled, liked, swiped, consumed, yet something inside you feels untouched. You're surrounded by everything, yet feel like you have nothing. You have the world's knowledge at your fingertips, but none of it feels like it truly knows you. You talk to dozens of people in a day but haven't felt truly seen in years. You achieve, consume, chase goals, take trips, post photos, get likes. But when all the noise fades and you're left alone with your own breath, it hits. Why does modern life, so full of options, pleasures, connections, feel so empty? It's a paradox we rarely pause to examine. On paper, we are living in the most advanced, connected, and comfortable age in human history. Pain has been dulled. Inconvenience almost eradicated. Our ancestors crossed deserts and oceans for a fraction of the comfort we access in minutes. Yet the suicide rate climbs. Anxiety disorders rise. Depression is no longer a shadow. It's become the room we live in. People wake up to alarms they dread, commute to jobs they tolerate, perform tasks that feel meaningless, and return home to screens that numb them just enough to do it all again. We have more but feel less. We connect more but relate less. We know more, but understand almost nothing about ourselves. Is it possible that the very things we believe are making life better are, in fact, draining it of meaning? We've filled our calendars but emptied our souls. We've turned quiet moments into content, discomfort into diagnosis, boredom into a crisis. We've built entire industries around distracting ourselves from the uncomfortable, forgetting that meaning is often found precisely in those uncomfortable places. But when did this emptiness begin? Was it when we replaced conversations with notifications? When solitude became loneliness? When silence became unbearable? Or has this emptiness always been there, merely amplified by the noise of the modern world? Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And in today's world, the absurd has become the norm. We avoid ourselves with precision. We self-medicate with productivity, with busyness, with curated digital personas. We run from pain by intellectualizing it, analyzing it, monetizing it. We no longer ask, "Who am I?" We ask, "How am I doing?" As if performance was identity. We ask, "Am I enough?" But never, enough for what? There is a growing famine of meaning, not in the world but within us. We are starving for something we can't name. Something that no job title, no relationship, no luxury, no metric of success has yet to fulfill. And perhaps the scariest part of all, we've gotten so good at pretending to be okay, we've forgotten how to not be. So we drift through life, half awake, half alive, following invisible scripts handed to us by a society that promises happiness at the next milestone, but always moves the finish line. You can feel it, can't you? That subtle ache beneath your chest. The questions you shove down in the middle of the workday. The existential friction you brush aside when scrolling late at night. The quiet voice whispering that maybe, just maybe, you're not living the life you're meant to live. Not because you're lazy, not because you're broken, but because the life you were taught to chase was never designed to fulfill the soul. What if everything you were told about success is a clever trick to keep you moving but never arriving? What if the emptiness isn't a personal failure, but a symptom of a much deeper disorder, embedded in the very structure of modern existence? This isn't just your story, it's ours. And until we uncover the roots of this unseen epidemic, until we confront the psychological and philosophical machinery beneath modern life, we will remain trapped in a beautiful cage. But the question remains, why? Why has progress created distance? Why has comfort bred numbness? Why, despite having it all, do we feel like something essential is still missing? The answer lies deeper, in a hidden architecture of thought and culture, of mind and meaning, of systems and illusions. It's time we go there. It's easy to blame ourselves for the emptiness. We say we're not disciplined enough, not grateful enough, not busy enough, not mindful enough. We look in the mirror and see the problem staring back at us. But what if we're looking in the wrong direction? What if the problem isn't just personal, but structural? Not just emotional, but philosophical? Modern life, despite its glimmering promise of convenience, has been constructed atop a foundation that quietly erodes the human spirit. Its architecture is rational, efficient, optimized, and spiritually bankrupt. To understand why, we must go back, not in time but into the psyche, back into the shadowy corridors of the human condition, where ancient fears still whisper and unexamined assumptions still rule. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is not just a container of conscious thoughts but a vast ecosystem. And the parts we ignore, the fears, the instincts, the rage, the shame, the hunger for meaning, do not disappear. They become the shadow. In Jung's words, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Modern life has perfected the art of shadow suppression. We outsource pain to medication. We reduce identity to algorithms. We mistake productivity for purpose. And in doing so, we've created a psychological split. The soul wants depth, but society demands speed. The self longs for meaning, but the system rewards performance. This tension is not new, but it has reached a fever pitch. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it coming over a century ago. He warned of the death of God, not just as a religious crisis, but a collapse of meaning. In a world where the divine is replaced by the transactional, and where mystery is replaced by measurement, people would no longer know why they live. They'd only know how to survive. Nietzsche didn't fear atheism. He feared nihilism, the loss of any deep, transcendent value. And he was right. Because in place of meaning, we've been given entertainment. In place of truth, we're sold narratives. We aren't led to examine our souls. We're told to curate our brands. And as Arthur Schopenhauer noted, humans are not naturally happy. They are restless, driven by a ceaseless will to strive, achieve, and consume, only to find that satisfaction is always just beyond reach. Modern society has taken this restlessness and monetized it. Why teach stillness when you can sell stimulation? Why cultivate inner silence when noise is more profitable? The world doesn't want you to feel whole. It wants you to feel slightly incomplete, just enough to buy more, click more, achieve more, hustle more. But here's the twist. You can never be complete in a system designed to feed on your incompleteness. Jean-Paul Sartre would say that we are condemned to be free. That is, freedom sounds beautiful, until you realize it means you alone are responsible for creating meaning in a meaningless universe. And most people don't want that responsibility. So we default to scripts, pre-written lives handed down by culture, family, media. We choose comfort over confrontation. We would rather be numb than risk facing the terror of freedom. The tragedy? By avoiding meaning-making, we abandon the very thing that could save us. We let society tell us who we are. We live in what Eric Fromm called a marketing personality, where people become commodities selling themselves in the marketplace of identity. Our value becomes tied to how well we can perform ourselves for others. This is why modern life feels empty. Not because there's nothing around us, but because we've been severed from our interior world. We've built civilizations outward but collapsed inward. We've been trained to see time as a resource to manage, not a sacred rhythm to live in. We've been trained to believe emotions are inconveniences rather than signals. We've been trained to measure everything, but rarely ask what matters. All this Huxley envisioned a future not of oppression, but of distraction. In Brave New World, people aren't controlled by force but by pleasure. There is no big brother, just a big buffet of triviality. And here we are, drowning in comfort, starving for purpose. Because here's the secret, the psyche doesn't care about success metrics. It cares about truth, about connection, about meaning. And when we deny it those things, it turns on us. The emptiness you feel, that is not a defect. It is a signal, a protest from your soul. A quiet rebellion against the flatness of a world that has no room for depth. A whisper saying, this is not what you were made for. And now you're beginning to see it, aren't you? The architecture of this hollowness isn't random, it's engineered. From the education system that rewards conformity, to the social systems that reward image over integrity, to the economic systems that reward endless striving with existential debt. You were not taught how to be whole. You were taught how to be useful. But here lies the deeper tragedy. Most people never question the system. They internalize their suffering as weakness. They assume they're broken because they don't feel fulfilled by the lives they were told to live. If you feel like you don't fit into this world, said Gabor Mate, it's because you were never meant to conform to a sick society. This sickness is subtle. It wears a smiling mask. It looks like convenience, but inside it's cutting you off from your instincts, your emotions, your soul. So now the question is no longer what's wrong with me? The real question is, what's wrong with a world that makes so many of us feel empty in the first place? It starts subtly. You can't name it at first. A dull weight under your ribs. A feeling that something's off but you can't explain why. You wake up, scroll your feed, sip your coffee, laugh at a meme, go to work and come home. Yet inside there's a quiet hum of dissatisfaction that never fully goes away. It doesn't scream. It hums. Constantly. Like an old machine in the basement of your psyche, always running, buzzing with questions you're too busy to hear. This is the unseen consequence of modern emptiness. It doesn't destroy your life. It dulls it. It anesthetizes your longing, one notification at a time. And the worst part? You start to think this is normal. We've built a world where the unnatural feels routine. You're surrounded by people every day, but you feel more alone than ever. You have access to infinite knowledge, but you can't focus long enough to absorb it. You're busier than ever, but nothing feels meaningful. This is the psychic toll of a hyperstimulated, disembodied life. Psychologists call it low-grade despair. It doesn't always look like sadness. It looks like chronic distraction. It looks like scrolling until 2 a.m. It looks like working jobs you hate, then binging shows you barely enjoy. It looks like smiling in selfies and crying in silence. But where does it come from? Let's return to Carl Jung. He warned that when the unconscious is ignored for too long, it doesn't disappear. It projects itself onto the world. This projection distorts how we see everything. Other people, relationships, even our own value. You begin to think your worth is tied to output. You start seeing people as competition or validation machines. You measure joy by metrics, likes, follows, income, aesthetics. And this subtle distortion reshapes the entire architecture of your reality. You stop asking what feels right and start asking what will make me look right. You stop hearing your inner voice because the outside noise is too loud. This is where modern life becomes truly dangerous, not because it hurts you, but because it convinces you to hurt yourself. Willingly, quietly, repeatedly. Behavioral psychology shows how easily the brain can be rewired through repetition and reward. A like triggers dopamine. A purchase brings a short-lived high. A distraction numbs the pain. Over time, these shallow hits of pleasure replace deep wells of meaning. You become addicted to the surface. Not because you're weak, but because you're human, and the system knows it. Gabor Mate reminds us that addiction isn't about weakness or lack of willpower. It's a response to pain, to disconnection, to unresolved trauma and unmet emotional needs. And in a world that never stops, where there's no space to grieve or feel or simply be, almost everything becomes an addiction. Work, sex, status, screens, even spirituality. Anything to avoid stillness. Because in stillness, the truth starts whispering. Here's the paradox. We're more connected than ever, digitally. Yet, psychologically, we've never been more fragmented. We don't know how to be alone, yet we feel isolated in crowds. We crave authenticity, yet fear being seen. We want meaning, but are terrified of what we might find when we search for it. This psychic dissonance creates what existential psychologists call ontological insecurity, a persistent feeling that your existence lacks grounding, coherence, or purpose. And this insecurity breeds subtle forms of self-abandonment. You settle, not just in relationships or careers, but in identity. You start becoming a stranger to yourself, choosing comfort over curiosity, certainty over courage. This is how the emptiness grows, not through dramatic collapse, but through daily erosion. You trade aliveness for safety. You stop asking hard questions. You shrink into versions of yourself that feel acceptable, palatable, likable. Let's get even deeper. There is a collective cognitive bias at play here. It's called status quo bias, the tendency to prefer the familiar even when it causes harm. We stay in broken systems because they are predictable. We avoid change because change feels risky. This is how modern emptiness becomes self-perpetuating. You feel something is wrong, but the culture gaslights you. It says, you just need to meditate more. Buy this self-help book. Try a productivity hack. And so, you optimize a broken life instead of questioning it, but you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. This is the greatest unseen consequence. We've built an emotional operating system that rewards suppression, speed, and surface-level existence, and punishes depth, slowness, and soul-searching. Arthur Schopenhauer once said, A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. In other words, even our desires are conditioned. You think you want success, but maybe you've just been told that's what makes you valuable. You think you want popularity, but maybe you just don't want to feel invisible. You think you want peace, but maybe you fear what silence would reveal. This is the tragedy of modern desire. It's not that we don't get what we want, it's that we don't even know what we truly want anymore. And so we wander endlessly, distracted, stimulated, functional, and quietly starving. This starvation doesn't show up on medical scans, but it echoes in our conversations, our scrolling habits, our sleepless nights. It shows up in the way we ask, "Is this all there is?" and the silence that follows. But here's the thing. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something else, something radical, something buried beneath the noise, waiting to be uncovered. Because once you see the matrix, you can no longer go back. And once you feel the true cost of your conditioning, the rebellion begins. It doesn't begin with a grand revolution. It begins in a quiet moment. A whisper in your mind asking, what if everything I've been told about a good life is a lie? You don't scream. You don't flip tables. You simply pause, and in that pause, reality starts to crack. The rebellion against modern emptiness isn't loud. It's personal. It's internal. It begins the moment you dare to question what you were told to chase. Imagine this. You wake up one morning and you don't reach for your phone. The silence is strange, almost unnerving. But in that silence, you hear something that's been drowned out for years. Yourself. Not the conditioned voice that tells you to hustle, perform, or impress, but the deeper one, the voice that doesn't care how many followers you have or what your job title is. The one that only asks, are you living in truth? That's the first step of rebellion. Reconnection. Modern emptiness thrives on disconnection, from nature, from each other, from ourselves. But once you reawaken to your own inner world, you start seeing the machinery for what it is. You see how your emotions have been commodified, how your fears have been marketed, how your attention has been bought and sold. And suddenly, you no longer want to play the game. You want to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Carl Jung believed that freedom begins when we integrate the shadow, the parts of ourselves we were taught to reject. Rebellion isn't just about society. It's about facing the parts of yourself you buried to survive in that society. Your rage, your sadness, your deep yearning for meaning. All of these carry clues. Not to who you should be, but to who you are beneath the masks. And when you allow yourself to feel fully, without judgment, you begin the most radical act in a numb world. You come alive. But the world won't applaud this. In fact, it will resist you. Because nothing terrifies a superficial society more than a fully conscious human being. You'll be told you're being too emotional, too intense, too idealistic, too much. But all they're really saying is, you're not staying asleep like the rest of us. Rebellion also means slowing down, in a culture that glorifies speed. Speed is how the machine keeps you from thinking, from feeling, from wondering whether you're headed in the right direction. But when you slow down, when you say no to the endless optimization of your soul, you start seeing what truly matters. Time with people who see you, work that nourishes you, moments of silence where nothing is produced, yet everything is revealed. This is the second step, stillness. Stillness is not laziness, it's resistance. It's how you unplug from the rhythm of the machine and listen to the rhythm of your own heart. Then comes the third step, reclaiming your attention. Your attention is your most sacred currency, not because of what it can buy, but because of what it can build, your inner world. Right now, your attention is a battlefield. Every scroll, every ad, every algorithm is competing to hijack it. But what happens when you take it back? You start to choose what enters your mind. You start to build a life around intention, not reaction. You stop consuming so much and start creating. This is how rebellion becomes empowerment. You don't just escape the system, you begin to rewrite your narrative. Consider Nietzsche, who said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will often be lonely and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." Owning yourself, that's what this is really about. Not chasing perfection, not achieving more, but coming back into ownership of your soul, your time, your mind. And then, the most revolutionary act of all, creating meaning. Not finding it, not waiting for it, but creating it in the small, rebellious choices of daily life. When you cook a meal slowly with intention. When you say, "I love you," like you mean it. When you walk barefoot in nature and remember you're part of something ancient. When you sit with a friend and listen, really listen, without the need to perform or solve. These moments may seem small, but they are revolutionary, because they anchor you in the real, in the raw, in the human. And this is where true aliveness lives, not in achievements but in presence. Let's not pretend this is easy. There will be days when the old patterns call you back, when the noise feels louder than your truth, when you wonder if any of this matters. But remember this, every time you choose authenticity over approval, stillness over speed, depth over distraction, you are breaking the spell. And in a world that profits from your disconnection, your wholeness is a threat. This is your rebellion. It won't look like fire in the streets. It will look like fire in your eyes. And once you light that fire, not even the darkest parts of modern life can put it out. You've peeled back the layers. You've stared into the emptiness. You've seen the machine. You've felt the ache of disconnection, the slow suffocation of meaning. And now, standing at the edge of all illusions, one truth remains. This emptiness is not your enemy. It's your invitation. Modern life feels empty not just because it is hollow, but because you were meant for something deeper. Something the system cannot manufacture. Something no algorithm can deliver, no job title can define. You were meant to create meaning, not consume it. That's the final rebellion. Not to escape the emptiness, but to befriend it, to listen to its silence like a whisper from your soul. You've been conditioned to believe that silence equals failure, that slowing down is falling behind, that being lost means you're broken. But what if being lost is how you find what the world has forgotten? Aldous Huxley once said, "Most human beings have an almost infinite capacity for taking things for granted." And that's exactly what modern life wants you to do. Take your existence for granted. Take your potential for granted. Take your sacred power for granted. But when the numbness creeps in, when the scrolling stops satisfying, when the dopamine runs dry, that's when your soul knocks louder. And in that haunting emptiness, you begin to hear something ancient, a call back to yourself. Not your public persona, not your curated identity, but the you who still wonders, still aches, still believes there must be something more. The ultimate truth is this: you were never meant to be fulfilled by the system. You were meant to wake up inside it and transcend it. The emptiness you feel, that's your compass, your sacred discomfort, your soul's way of saying, stop outsourcing your life. Come home. You were told to chase comfort, but comfort is not where you grow. You were told to chase happiness, but happiness without depth is just sedation. You were told to chase success, but success without meaning is just distraction in a suit. So what now? Now you become the author. You stop asking, what should I do with my life? And start asking, what story am I writing with each breath? Your morning coffee becomes a ritual. Your silence becomes sacred. Your pain becomes poetry. You stop living for Friday. You stop dying for likes. You stop waiting for permission. Because meaning doesn't come from what you do. It comes from how you do it. You become deliberate, awake, dangerous. Because a person who finds meaning in small things, in honest conversations, in solitude, in loving with no agenda, can no longer be controlled. You don't need a perfect life. You need a real one. Let me tell you a secret. There is no grand revelation coming. No divine flash of understanding that suddenly solves everything. No blueprint waiting in a book or a course or a quote. The truth is far more radical. You already have what you're looking for. The stillness, the presence, the depth, the aliveness. They were never taken from you. You just stopped looking in the right place. You looked out there when it was always in here. And perhaps that's the most terrifying part. That nothing out there can save you. That it was always your responsibility. That the void wasn't here to break you, but to awaken you. Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote, "Man is a mystery. It needs to be unraveled, and if you spend your whole life unraveling it, don't say that you've wasted time. This is your life's real task, not to fix yourself, but to unfold yourself, to become more conscious, more awake, more you. Not the version they sold you, not the version you perform, but the version who remembers." So let me ask you, now that we've come this far, what if the emptiness you feel is not a flaw in you, but a flaw in the world you were told to fit into? What if your sadness is sacred, Your longing is divine? Your dissatisfaction is not a bug but a message? And what if your very desire for more truth, more beauty, more aliveness, is proof that you are still whole enough to want something real? There will be no fireworks to mark this moment. No applause. But maybe, just maybe, there will be a quiet breath, a new kind of stillness, and a fire inside you that won't go out. Because now you know, you were not born to be sedated. You were not born to be efficient. You were not born to chase illusions. You were born to feel, to create, to rebel with love, to make this life a mirror of something deeper than profit or praise. You were born to turn emptiness into art. And if even a part of you knows this to be true, then your journey has already begun. Now go, unplug, unlearn, unfold. You're not here to escape the world. You're here to wake it up.